right. I talked to a lot of businesses where, we're trying to figure out how much to sell the equity for. And I always ask them, when do we plan to sell the business for how much? And sometimes people will say, I don't plan to ever sell the business. This is a family business.
Yeah.
I'm going to be gifting it to my grandchildren. Well, then equity is not the right structure here. We're going to be doing revenue-based funding or some other structure where we don't have to sell the business. We're going to pay them out of revenue or some other mechanism.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Coffee Break Podcast, where our mission is to share business ideas, practices, and strategies while we enjoy our cup of coffee. Today's conversation is really fun. We're talking with Hall Martin of 10 Capital Network. It is a venture capital investor connector of sorts, and he's going to be talking a little bit about that. A really interesting conversation. If you have any concept of understanding how to bring a startup to market, the things that you would want to be prepared for, kind of all of that world. How much of the startup world to venture capitalist is like Shark Tank? Well, that's one of the questions that I asked. We're going to break down all of that in just a few minutes. But before we get to it, I do want to invite you to subscribe if you haven't already. We have over 150 episodes. We've been doing this for over 3.5 years. We've got plenty of episodes very similar to this that are all about business ideas, practices, and strategies, how to build a successful team, how to use culture index or personality assessments. How do you create structure? How do you create priorities? How do you create good workflows? All of that information. We've got episodes on this for you, and we want to invite you to check them all out. It's all available at locdoc.net/podcast. You can subscribe there on the audio platforms as well as our YouTube and Facebook channel, where we have the video versions of these as well. So please make sure you check that out and subscribe, because we have a brand new episode every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. Now, let's grab a cup of coffee and get ready for this conversation.
We got so much to say. We got a podcast to make. We're sipping on lattes, and it's time for a coffee break. It's time for a coffee break. Oh, yeah.
Well, Hall, thank you for joining us today, all the way from Texas. It's a blast to talk to anybody from Texas.
Great. Thanks for having me here. Looking forward to it.
I feel like we had somebody on from Austin, Texas a few weeks ago. But whenever I get to go to Austin, Texas, I like to go eat tacos. What is your favorite taco joint in Austin, Texas?
Torchy's Tacos. They've got a nice variety of tacos. My family likes it. We go there all the time.
Yeah. Hey, they've got tons of locations around the area too, right?
That's right. Easy to get in and out of, but a lot of unique tacos, not just the plain vanilla, but a lot of interesting variations.
Yes, I've been to Torchy's a few times. It's pretty exciting. Okay, cool. Well, let's jump into rapid fire. 5 randomly selected questions just to get under your skin with unknown point values. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Question number 1. What thing from your childhood do you still enjoy to this day?
Eating ice cream.
Ooh, okay. Question though, what is your favorite ice cream?
Rocky Road.
Okay. Well, that's good. If you say mint chocolate chip, we just automatically have to end the podcast. So good choice.
I just bullet there.
Question number 2. Do you name inanimate objects like your car or a toy or something like that?
Do I name inanimate objects?
Yeah.
Yes. Have named my car before. Charlie, I named him once because he looked like a Charlie. So I do that sometimes just to, remind myself who we're working with.
How does a car look like a Charlie?
It's just the way the hood stood. I don't know.
Question number 3. What uncommon thing would you encourage everyone to try at least once?
Uncommon thing. Let's see. About that. Uncommon. Some things are common for people, others are not. I would say it is traveling to unique places like Marfa, Texas.
Okay. What is unique about that?
It's a very interesting place, artistic, a lot of people moving there. And at night they have the lights, and nobody knows where the lights come from. And people used to think they were UFOs. They're still out there. Some think they're gas flares, coming off of the oil fields and so forth, but that's been disproven, and nobody still knows where the lights come from in Marfa. So I always say, go see if you can find the source of the lights from Marfa, Texas. It's a journey.
Okay, that's great. I like it. If you had to describe your current life as a movie, what movie would you choose?
Oh, let's see. Which movie am I living right now? I lived several before. I was the traveler there for a while. Today, let's see. I can't say Benjamin Buttons, but it feels like that. Life is going backwards in some ways. So I think I'm living the Benjamin Buttons life.
All right. Good answer. Question number 5, last one. What destination is at the top of your list to visit?
Iceland.
I have seen so many YouTube videos recently on people visiting Iceland. It seems like that would be a really cool place to go.
Been there several times, want to get back. So that's at the top of my list to go to when I get the chance. Now that the pandemic's subsiding, the opportunity is coming back.
There was one I was watching the other day, and they were talking about how there's some of the largest glaciers in the world there, and they're starting to melt. And so it's creating these natural waterfalls all across Iceland, and you can just go explore and find all these really cool places.
Yes, I've been into the Viking shower, they call it, where the water runs off the glacier and you let it run on you. And if you can stay in there more than 30 seconds without passing out, you're a true Viking. I'm still working my way up to that.
That would be one that I would steer perfectly clear of. There's no reason for me to try to challenge that. Man, cool. Congratulations. You passed. I'm going to give you a score of 973. So congratulations.
Cool. Thanks.
Well, Hall, let's jump into the conversation today. So we were chatting just a few seconds before we got started with our recording today, and just trying to understand exactly where you fall. So you are in the world of helping venture capitalists and startups. But give me kind of in your world, in your words, I guess, what exactly that means and kind of what you're helping people do on a day-to-day basis.
So we help the startups and investors connect for funding, and we work in the accredited investor world, angels, VCs, family offices, those that are accredited investors. Because I came from the background of working with angel groups where there are high net worth people making investments into startups. And I saw the challenge that startups had in raising funding and the challenge that investors had in finding the right deals. And so we focus on that. And at heart, we're doing investor relations and introductions. We're helping people connect with the right ones. And we do online and we do events. And we do a number of ways to manage that process. And we curate the lists and what people are interested in and what the startups are doing.
So I would imagine, and I'm just processing this because, the entrepreneurs always are having these wild ideas and these fun ideas, right? What is like the wildest startup idea that's come across your desk that you're like, I don't know, this one's way out there?
One that came up recently is there's a startup in Dallas that's trying to, a la Jurassic Park, trying to bring a woolly mammoth back to life. And they're trying to extract DNA from woolly mammoth tissue and try to re-engage it and recreate a woolly mammoth is what they're trying to do.
Okay. So this is great. I mean, that was amazing, an amazing example. So from an investor standpoint, does that look like a fun investment or does that look like a high risk investment? Like, where does that kind of lie? Like when that comes across your desk and you're looking at it and going, hey, okay, well, we got some folks that are trying to make a woolly mammoth. How does that rate on your kind of scale of finding them funding?
Well, there's probably going to be a lot of interesting technologies coming out of it. So it's possible that the company can monetize the technologies. So from that point of view, it's in the medium category. To bring an actual woolly mammoth back to life is in the very, very challenging part of it. And then you're asking who would pay for that? What's the monetization of a woolly mammoth in today's market? Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of questions being answered there. But like I say, I often find that what the startup is about is really not where you make the money. And we have many companies coming in where they're providing a service, But what they're really doing is gathering data, and they plan to monetize the data later. And it's not a bad idea. You can make a little bit of money off the service as you're doing it. And then, because it takes a while to gather the data, build up decent data sets, it takes an amount of time. And so we're always coaching startups, capture all your data into one place, clean, well-structured sets. And then later, a couple of years from now, go back and see if you can monetize that data. And that doesn't have to necessarily be about people or their identity or anything. There's just other things that people will pay for data. And so that's like I say, what people are actually doing on the surface is not always what's happening behind the scenes.
That is okay. You've unpacked a very wide open conversation. This could go on for hours, but we got to be mindful of time. So oftentimes in a startup world, just to kind of recap what I just heard you say, there may be an idea that you're driving after, the woolly mammoth of the world, but how are you going to go about extracting the DNA? How are you going to go about processing that? What are the other discoveries and findings that you're going to come up with throughout that process that are actually really the valuable component of it, not the woolly mammoth?
That's right. And for example, with life science deals, I used to have, life science companies come to me in the biotech space where they're building a new therapeutic, and they only needed $200-300 million to get to market. And 5-10 years, especially if it's on the oncology track. And so what I'm discovering is a lot of these guys are finding out, the research I'm doing is of value to other researchers. Mm-hmm. So they're gathering their data, molecular interactions, clinical data, how the different patient responds to different chemicals and so forth. And they're actually putting that into a platform and licensing that out or selling subscriptions to it so others can come and learn from their experiments and their data, which is a great revenue stream for a biotech company, which used to have no revenue streams because you couldn't sell the product until it was FDA cleared. Well, turns out that a lot of the data and the content and the research that you have can be monetized. And that's what we coach our startups to do, is gather all your information into one place and sell subscriptions to it. For the low price of $100K a year, that's really nothing to a pharmaceutical. They will most likely sign up to get access to it. And it's less about, having an IT system where you can download the data. It's more about having access to the researchers that can give a view or feedback on a proposal that's coming up that's in the domain that you're working with. Because a lot of these chemicals are cutting across many different conditions, Alzheimer's, dementia, oncology, and so forth. And data research in one area can be applicable to another area. So there's a case of data actually becoming a monetizable asset in some cases.
We understand the frustrations HOA board members and property managers face when deciding the best solution for their HOA and pool security. Should we use a keypad, hand out keys, or install a key card system? Do we even need cameras? These are some of the questions that are difficult to navigate, and we're here to help. At Loc-Doc Security, we've spent over 20 years working with homeowners associations and property managers to find the system that best fits the pool and HOA needs. Camera systems for the front gate or front entrance, key card systems for the pool gates, or simply updating the gate so that it meets safety and code compliance. We like to take the guesswork out of the process to answer any questions and help find the right solution. Our mission is to help you protect your people and your property, and that includes pools. Contact our team today to schedule your free consultation for your community. So, I'm trying to process this because there's so many things going on in my brain right now. Effectively, a startup, they have this idea. I'm going to stick with the woolly mammoth because this is just a blast. As you come in and you say, okay, I see your idea. Now, I've got a couple of investors that I think would be really good to get on board with this. In order for this to be a functional investment for them, what else can you provide? What are the other things that you're going to be looking at? What are the other pieces of data? What are the other pieces of research that you're going to be doing? And how do we get a good understanding of that? Because they may be more interested in all of those subset components as a revenue generating stream, and they don't really care about the woolly mammoth. Is that kind of how you're helping them see that picture? Or is that something that is just broadly known that when they're like, hey, we're going to develop this woolly mammoth and here's all of our other business ideas, strategies that we're going to bring to the table?
Well, we bring it to them for several reasons. One is it makes the deal much more attractive to investors. So there's more things going on here that add value to the process. And so if I can sell data in addition to having a therapeutic, there's multiple revenue streams there. Typically, I can sell data faster than I can sell a therapeutic because of the FDA. And so I can start to, generate revenue and so forth. The other thing I find very interesting is when you have a partnership agreement with a pharmaceutical, and those who are signing up for your data are basically signing partnership agreements. That adds value to your startup because that gives validation. And in the startup world, it's all about validation. Have I validated the problem? Have I the market, the team, the technology? And when a pharmaceutical signs up to look at your technology, there's a level of validation there that helps you raise funding from investors, because if the big pharma are interested in this, well, then maybe so should I. And so that's one reason we do it. We're really not about doing consulting work. We're really trying to make the deal more attractive to investors. And the more you can do platform-based businesses, recurring revenue, those things have scalability. And then the data actually jumps your valuation up. I had an oil and gas company that was going to get, trying to go to an exit and found he would get 5x times revenue. But if he were in the data business, he'd be 10x revenue. And the third leg of that stool, for some, not all, is to put AI analytics on top of it. And so if you try to do all that in one go, it's very, very hard. So if you step it out every 2 years, we're going to go a next step, service, data, analytics. Well, then we can actually get up to a 15 or 20x valuation as well. And that's what investors look for. Is there a real valuation here that's going to make this worth a while?
So when we're talking about a startup idea, again, the woolly mammoth, when they bring this idea, what is the typical typical scenario for this business presentation? Because they're obviously going to be asking for lots and lots of capital investment. What are they bringing to the table to say, here is our business proposal, this is what we believe that we can bring, and what of that is attractive to an investor?
The top level is just a very well-defined pitch deck, 10, 12 slides on what the opportunity is. I call it the introductory version, where you define the problem, you offer the solution, you talk about the product you're going to build, in the go-to-market. You talk about the team, the competitive advantage. You talk about the size of the market, both the total available and the serviceable, and what I also call the beachhead market. And then you're also putting in there about the financial projections. If we raise the money we propose, what will this look like? Very high level thumbnail. What are the use of the funds? How are we going to spend those funds? And then what's the exit? So at a high level, I kind of get the broad picture all the way across. At the next level down, we look for a due diligence box or a data room, which are the core documents investors expect to see in a deal. The entity filings, the patent filings. Half the value of a patent is with investors, so you want to do that before you raise funding, not after. And then these can be provisional patents. They don't have to be the final. There's a whole art around patent strategy that people should be following. But to continue the diligence box, there's 3 to 5 year financial forecasts. There's the income statement, the balance sheet. How much debt do you have? What kind of growth have you had before? And CVs of all the leadership team, and then the cap table, which is capitalization table, is the list of who owns how much of the stock. Because you're looking for incentives. Are the right people incentivized to take this all the way, or are the wrong people incentivized and they really can't help us? So you want to check all those things out before you go forward. So those are the core documents we look for when you go to talk to an investor. You have the pitch deck. If there's interest, they look at the diligence box. If there's interest, you negotiate the term sheet. And we help with the term sheet as well. We start with convertible notes and go to equity later when there's more valuation points to look at. It can be hard in the early stage to negotiate equity term sheets because setting valuation is quite a negotiation at the early stage. And the more data you have, more proof points you have, the easier it is to land on a number with the investor.
How much of this world is been distorted by Shark Tank?
Well, I think most people understand Shark Tank, the vast majority of startups on there are not raising funding. I can tell when they ask Mark Cuban and Mark Cuban says, well, I'll give you X for this and that. They say, yeah, whatever. They're really there to sell their product. They're getting exposure for their product. And that's a big help to the startup to get that much more selling going on. And it's a little bit curated and highly, dramatized a little bit. So I don't think it really hurts the startup world so much. In fact, I hope that startups, look at that and get a sense of what you have to bring to the table to get an investor excited about your deal. And you have to bring a lot. My coaching to startups is don't show up empty-handed, come with validation and proof points that demonstrate you have a real product here, a real team, a real market, a real customer, and make clear what that is.
So you're typically, this isn't conceptual at this point. You're typically dealing with startups that are already in the works. They just need the additional funding to take it kind of to the next level of whatever that is.
Yeah, most angels and VCs want to see some product built and some evidence that customers will buy it. We're just going into market is the most common place we see people coming in. There are some VCs that want to see $1 million or $2 or $3 million of revenue, but mostly we deal with angels and others that are in the go-to-market phase. If you wait till they get $1 million or $2 million, well, then there's so many other investors that want to be in the deal. It can be very too competitive for the investor. So you sometimes have to come in earlier than you like just to get into the deal.
What is a typical time frame? So say this woolly mammoth concept, they started up this concept in 2020 during the height of the pandemic. How long is it that they're working towards what they're working on before it becomes a viable presentation to some investors?
Well, some people can put a deck together pretty fast. In a couple of months, you can have a pitch deck where you have your story. And of course, it will be changing every day from there on, but you can have an initial deck up and running pretty quickly. To go raise funding from people that know you, they're basically taking your word for it, and they're investing in you. And so that part can go pretty quick. The family and friends round, we call it, is the easy part. And the part you have to do first, because no investor wants to go first. Well, that's family and friends' job. Your job is to go first. And so if you know the guy and you believe in them and you're supporting them, well, then you'll do that. And then the next one is where it takes a little bit more time, because now you have to start building the case, because these are not family and friends, and they want their money back. And I used to get that question a lot from people that went from family and friends to venture capital or angels, is they keep asking me hard questions. Well, what are they asking you? Well, they want to know how they're going to get their money back. And I thought, well, yeah, you're going to have an answer for that, which means you need to communicate that you can build and sell a product in short order, and then you can grow this business to a sizable amount that you can sell it. So all those things need to be proven along the way. Who's going to buy the product, who's going to build a product, who's going to sell it in your company, and who's going to buy your company at the end of that road. So you need to have some idea of what those things look like and have a story behind that. There's reasonable good chance here that it will happen. No one can guarantee it, but there needs to be some vision as to what that looks like.
I think that's one of the interesting components, is we've, in our organization here, it's not a startup, and it's been privately held for a long time. So, which is a completely different route. Obviously, what you're talking about is, here's an idea, we want to spin it up, we want to grow it, and we want to sell it. So we want to sell it off to somebody else. If that's not the path of your organization, then this is definitely not a play, because you're effectively bootstrapping it.
That's right. I talked to a lot of businesses where we're trying to figure out how much to sell the equity for, and I always ask them, when do we plan to sell the business for how much? And sometimes people will say, I don't plan to ever sell the business. This is a family business. I'm going to be gifting it to my grandchildren. Well, then equity is not the right structure here. We're going to be doing revenue-based funding or some other structure where we don't have to sell the business. We're going to pay them out of revenue or some other mechanisms. There's a new model called income share agreements, where you pay back the investors based on 8% of salaries, and so now you've aligned the startup and the investor very closely because the startup wants a good salary and the investor wants to get paid back. So I'll just take a piece of the salary that you get. The more you pay yourself, the more you pay the investor, and the faster we get to the end game on it. So we're always seeing innovations in this space that are quite interesting.
Yeah, most definitely. So I appreciate you sharing that, because I think whenever you're talking about investment, when you're talking about growth and business development and business strategies, it can be very black and white. And it's interesting that there's other options out there that you can look at and try to figure out, okay, here is my long-term plan. Here is where I'm trying to take this thing. And then what is going to be the best source to help get there?
Right. And, the challenge I had as an angel investor was not that the deal went up and exited with a lot of money. That was great when it happened. Not often, but it did. And then, the other opportunities when it goes and it just crashes down and they declare bankruptcy and we get a tax write-off. But the most challenging part for an investor is when it goes sideways. It didn't go all the way up and go all the way down. It just went up a ways and then now moves sideways. They're not raising money anymore. They're really not on what I call the venture exit. They're just became a lifestyle business, where it's a nice business for the three of us here. Sorry, nobody wants to buy the company anymore. What do we do about that? And out of 10 deals, one will go up and one will crash down, and 2 or 3 will be nice returns, and the rest will turn into lifestyle businesses, which is 4 or 5 of them. And so to solve that problem, I decided to come up with my own term sheet. I call the 3X and 3. That means at year 3, it's a convertible note that will mature and turn to equity. And I have a redemption right for the investors, investor sole discretion, that says you get 3X your original investment, or you forego that and go on the cap table for the original investment. So 50K in is 150K out. And what the company can pay, they pay, and what they can't, it just goes on to a revenue share agreement from that point onward. So we'll get our 3X probably over the next 2-3 years, depending upon, if it's a nice ongoing business, that's great, just pay us out. And so, I've invested in deals where 3 years in, they come to me and they say, I think we should take all of our employees to market rate. And I first heard that, I thought to myself, that sounds right. And then I thought to myself, no, that's wrong. Why is that wrong? Well, the implicit agreement we have here in this startup world on equity investments is that the entrepreneur is going to live on ramen noodles for 5 years to make the exit as big as possible, and the investor is not going to take out any profit share dividends at the same time to make it as big as possible. When we're no longer living on ramen noodles, but now we're living on 1.5 to 2x market rate salaries, because that's the new exit, then that's a problem for the investor, because they're not going to get anything out of that. And so decided to move into a mode where if the entrepreneur goes on what I call the payroll exit, I'm right there with you. I'm just going to turn to revenue share, and I'll be, right there on the salary table with you guys. And found that was a very useful tool to close deals, because now there's a stopgap to get out of the deal. If you ever try to negotiate these exits after the fact, or redemption rights, I should say, it's very, very hard to close the gap. Everybody's too far apart. So you have to negotiate that before you get into the deal. Hey, if this is not going to go anywhere, what's going to happen? Well, this is one scenario for how it might go down.
Can you copy this key? That's a question we get asked about 3,422 times a year. And how can you actually be sure that the person who asked that question is supposed to get a copy of that key? Well, we think you should always know who can copy your keys to your business and your home, because it could be your neighbor, an old employee, a contractor, or even worse, your mother-in-law. At Loc-Doc Security, we believe in protected key systems, so you always know who has a copy of your key. To find out more, visit locdoc.net or stop by our Charlotte location. Loc-Doc Security, helping you protect your people and your property. You are a wealth of knowledge. It sounds like you have walked through a lot of fun experiences, and then obviously you've learned from those. And how do you apply that for the next deal?
Yes, we've been doing this since I started angel investing in 2001. Joined a local group, lost all my money, saw this is harder than it looks. that group went away when the .com world went away. And then we had a new group in Austin called the Central Texas Angel Network. This is the first member to sign up. And when you're the first member to sign up, you're automatically on the board in charge of membership. It's a great honor. Yeah. No pay, but it's a great honor. And so I did that for a while, and then we lost our director. So I became the director for the first 2 years and got that group up to about 50 members and got about $5 million invested in 20 deals. And the investors in that group got 33x return out of their investment. So it was a big win and propelled the group onward. And then my undergraduate, Baylor, came and said they want an angel network. So I helped put that together. And that had a very strong student education component to it. If you ever want to do an angel group at a university, I learned the hard way when I went to the University of Texas in Austin, said, hey, I think you guys can make some money if you start an angel group, and have them look at you and say, you have all the money in the world. We don't need your money. And so the thing you do with with a university is, we're here to foster student education and job placement. Oh, okay. Well, let's have a discussion about that. How can you help us do that? And so you have to think the dynamics are a little bit different in different parts of the world. And so that's what we did at Baylor. We were able to make that play work, and it's still going very strongly there. But then I've had a local community, Williamson County, it's called Wilco here in this area, that wanted an angel group to help foster startup investments to attract more to the area. And so that went well. So just had a lot of different experiences with building angel groups from the ground up in different modes and formats. And as we go past the pandemic, we're seeing many of these groups grow outside of their region because they have an online component that lets them recruit members from outside the geographic area. Sure. And are seeing several groups go to 300, 400, 500 members now when they have a good track record to showcase.
That's very cool, man. And so I asked you earlier, what is the wildest or most unusual startup that's been brought to your attention? What is been the biggest successful one that's come across your desk that you've processed and helped get funding for?
Well, I think one that was originally called CS Identity here in Austin, if you ever watch the commercials where Experience talking about searching the dark web for people trafficking in your information, that was CS Identity, and that was a 40x return for the group as well. That was one of the biggest returns we ever got was from that. They were just doing a cyber identity play at the right time, and had a really good team that did a really great job with that. So it was really a good one for us, and have had others near that, but not quite that. The other ones were data plays and other things that did pretty well.
Very cool. Your company is called 10 Capital Network. The website's 10capital.group. We'll have it linked in the show notes. If somebody wants to get in contact with you, what's the best avenue? What do they need to be prepared for?
If you have something you want to talk to us about, go to our website and submit a request for info, and we'll get the right person on it. And I talk to most people that come through our website, so happy to talk to anybody, startups, investors, or otherwise. So looking forward to connecting with anybody that likes the startup world. And that's what we do, is we hang out in the startup world and we help connect people.
Very cool. All, thank you again for your time today. It was a blast. Lots of information coming out of the fire hose. Man, great information. I've got notes here, things to be prepared for. And I think one of my big takeaways, maybe you never have a concept that you're going to take to venture capital. Maybe you have an idea that you're just working through. There's a couple of things in here that you can be mindful of, is understanding how to tell your story, understanding who your ideal market is, understanding what the potential problem is that you're trying to solve. All of those things are really great context for anything that you're doing, no matter what the scale is. If it's a $100,000 a year business or $100 million a year business, I think you can apply those same concepts for whatever it is that you're focused on. So thank you again for your time today. If this is your first time listening or watching this podcast, we invite you to subscribe. We have a brand new episode every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m., and we hope that you subscribe wherever you're watching or listening to this. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time right here on the Coffee Break Podcast.